Hi guys, Samantha from Jessima Tutorials here, and today I'm going to show you how to create a faux enamel piece. So I've got some Prima Pearl White here rolled out on my thickest setting, and I have chosen a texture stamp. Now the only important thing with the texture stamp to note is that you want the pattern to be you want the largest parts of the pattern to be indented and basically the fine outlines to be raised. That's the only thing that you really need to keep in mind when choosing a texture stamp. So I'm just going to use this one. So this is my anemone texture stamp. I'll provide a link to the correct one in the description below. But you can use any texture stamp you want. And I'm just going to use a dropper to just apply some water, and the reason I'm using water to create a non-stick surface rather than cornstarch is because we're going to be applying either alcohol ink or mica powder to the surface of the clay, and so I need the clay to remain sticky. And if you apply cornstarch to the clay, it will no longer be sticky, and so it will have trouble picking up powders. So I apply water in that case. Just place that down, and I also will apply a little bit of water to the back just so that it's not going to stick to my roller. I'm just going to apply, this is not completely necessary, just a precaution essentially. And I'm going to take my roller, I'm going to stand up, and I'm going to roll one way and then the other way. Okay, give it one last quick pass over, and that should be good. You can see it didn't stick at all, and it shouldn't stick in the stamp at all, and that's given me a nice raised image. Put that to the side, dry everything off. Okay, and then once that's dry, I'm going to take the circle that I'm going to be using in the pattern, and I'm going to try to find the center of that pattern, so round about there, and I'm just going to cut out our piece. Okay, and then this all can be used again, so there's no waste. Okay, and I'm just gently going to pat down each of these, make sure that they're all stuck down. Alright, now we can apply our ink. Okay, and I'm choosing to use this just because I feel like it gives a more metal look than the mica powder does. But you can use mica powder, you can use acrylic paint, or you can use ink, whichever one is more convenient, or whichever one you choose looks the best. So I'm just going to pop down a bit, and I'm just going to be using a makeup sponge to apply it. So I'm going to soak the sponge in that, and then I'm going to tap over the surface. And you want to try to keep it mostly to the raised areas if you can. If you get a little bit in the indented areas, that's not a major issue, but you do want to try to keep it as clean as you can. Okay, I'll just add a little more, and just go in and make sure that I have decent coverage across the whole piece. Okay, and I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, then I just wanted you to take that disc, and I want you to heat set that in the oven for around 10-15 minutes at Primo's recommended temperature, just so that it's baked enough that it's not going to be distorting. If you want it to be nice and strongly cured, then you want to bake it for at least 40 minutes, but that's not completely necessary, but it means that later on, if you only baked it for like 15 to 10 minutes, it is a bit fragile, so you have to be careful with it. So you can decide whether you want to bake it for longer, so you don't have to worry about that. So I'll heat set it, and in the meantime we can work on our setting. Okay, so next I'm going to bring over the piece of clay that we can use for our border, and it was rolled out on my thickest setting as well. And this is completely optional, you don't have to, but I think it will look nice. I'm going to use a texture roller. A texture stamp will work as well, or if you don't want to do that, any generic like sandpaper or sponge texture will work as well. But basically I want to have something like this. I don't want it to be a completely recognisable pattern, so I'm going to roll over it again. I'm going to shift this around and I'm going to roll again. Okay, and you can see that creates quite an interesting pattern. Okay, and on just these raised areas I'm going in and flattening them out of it. But this is just to create a slightly different repeating pattern than what I usually make. So it's completely up to you whether you want to do that or not. I'm just going to trim away this excess. Okay, lift that up, popping that to the side, cleaning. Bring over a piece of either plain printing paper or greaseproof paper, baking paper, that sort of thing. Just pop this down. Okay, and very gently I'm just going to tap that down just so that it's smooth, or flat I mean. I'm not burnishing it at all, it's just so it's lying flat. And take the same cutter that you used to cut out the previous piece. And just bear in mind that we want to be able to fit this cutter on it. Cut it out. Just get that to release. There we go. Then I'm going to bring over a piece of paper, gently stick it down, flip, release this, and this way it doesn't jog at all. Okay, I am going to put that to the side, and I'm going to bring over a piece that's been rolled out on my second thinnest setting, so quite thin. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing that I did before, where I'll roll this pattern across it a few times to get a similar texture along the back. Okay, gonna lift that up like so. Bring this back over. Place that over the top. Bring over your piece of paper again. Gently smooth down and flip and lift, and that way you won't have jogged anything. Don't touch that. You don't want to be cutting out the border until you have your piece set. And here's the piece. And you might notice that the alcohol ink actually has turned even more gold after going in the oven. All I'm going to do is I'm going to pop that into place, and because it's been baked you can move it around. If it doesn't fit properly you can bring it out again, and you're not going to worry about it distorting, which is one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to bake it. Do be careful with it though, because it is fragile, it's not fully baked. Then bring over this and center it. Okay, and that looks about right. And then press down firmly. And then I'm just going to spin, because it's a circle and I can. And lift that up, remove the back, press on this piece because that's the baked piece, and release it. Okay, then gently press that down again, and also what I'll do is I'll just run my finger over the edge just to make sure that it is nice and smooth, like so. And there we go. Okay, then I've once again gone and heat set that. Okay. So I'm just going to go pop that to the side. That can cool, and in the meantime we're going to prepare our liquid clay. and I'm going to be using Kato liquid clay, and I'm only going to be using 2 colours. Just pop it down there and make sure this one's fairly separate. There we go. Okay, and here are the 2 colours that I am going to be using. You can use any colour and as many as you want. Okay, and I'm only going to be applying 2 drops at most per per puddle of liquid clay. I'll try to stick to 1 if I can, but sometimes the ink drops a little faster than I like it to. There we go. Mix that together. I'm just going to use a ball tool to do that. Mix both colours like so. Okay, then using your ball tool, take small amounts, just apply it inside of your piece. Do your best not to get it on the gold parts. We only need a very thin layer of liquid clay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the centre be this kind of lightish blue, which probably will turn slightly green after it's baked. And then as I get towards the edges, I will start putting in the dark blue. Okay, and there we go. You can see how it looks now that it's finished. So those gold marks that the gold that ended up going on the bumps actually look quite nice. I think it looks nice, so you shouldn't worry about getting gold on texture inside the gaps. Just try to limit it, that's all. So now the last thing I want to do is I want to add gold to the edges, but I am going to heat set this again. Make sure that liquid clay is cured before I start popping gold on, because the alcohol ink will interact with the raw clay if it happens to touch it. So heat set this for another 15 minutes and then we'll apply gold to the edges. And there we go. Now just bring over this again, give it a shake. I'll just apply a bit, and I am going to apply it just to the edge of my thing. And then I'm very carefully going to apply that gold, trying my best not to touch the inside area, like so. And there we go, and that ties it in quite nicely. I'm quite happy with how that looks. So now I'm going to bake that for a full hour at Primo's recommended temperature. And then I'm going to decide whether I want to give it a UV resin glaze, or if I want to just give it a gloss varnish glaze. So now, pop that into the oven for 40 minutes. Okay, and here it is out of the oven. So I'm happy with the back, and I'm happy with it in general. We do need to seal it just because of the gold ink. If you're using gold paint, you would not need to seal it just because the paint would have got baked on, but the ink still can rub off quite easily. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring over a brass, oh gosh, what do you call these? Eye pins, I guess? Pinhead? One of these. And I'm going to just pop that onto, or into, I guess, the pendant before I varnish it, just because it will give me something to hold onto while I varnish it. Okay, there we go. You might be able to see there that some of the gold did come off, so that is why I am taking care of it now. And I'm going to be using Varathane. You can also use a spray varnish, you can use Pearl X varnish, Cernet gloss varnish will work as well. Any of those will work. I'm just going to take a little bit of that, and I'm going to be brushing on a very thin layer. You don't want to be working with an absolute ton of this varnish. And so I'm going to be focusing on the edges for the most part, and then I'm going to brush it into the centre, like so. Coat the whole piece, and once you have finished coating it, you will allow it to dry. Generally it takes about an hour to dry to the touch, but you do want to leave it for a good 12 hours or so before handling it extensively. And that's why I put the eye pen in now, because it means that once this is dry to the touch, I can still finish assembling the piece, because I will only have to touch the eye pen. I won't have to touch the actual pendant. So anyway, continue brushing that on in a nice thin coat, and then allow it to dry. Okay, and here is now that it's pretty much dry. There's one or two spots that aren't completely dry, like you can see there's a little opaque spot over there still, but for the most part it is completely dry. I also, after I switched off the camera, hung this up on the eye pin over here, and I also varnished the sides, and I also did the back, so it's nice and shiny and finished off. So now we are going to string, and all I've got for that is I've just got this chain necklace with a little copper bail. And all I have to do is I have to take this jump ring over here, just grab that, open it up, slide it on and close, and I'll just make sure to close it properly. There we go. And there we go, that's pretty much all we have to do. And I quite like the chain because it just kind of gives it this kind of sunken sea medallion look. But again, it is completely up to you whether you want to go with that or not. There we go. So yeah, that's basically it for the tutorial. If you liked it, please do let me know in the comments below. And if you would like to support this channel so I can continue doing videos just like this one, please do consider becoming a member on YouTube or even becoming a patron. I will link to that in the description below. Both get exclusive videos. Patron more, but both do get exclusive videos if you're interested in it. Or if you would like to support me through buying some of the tools that I supply, there's a link to my Etsy shop in the description below. And as always, I will see you in the next tutorial. Bye for now.